talk to you about something that I learned about 2 weeks ago. And you want to know what that thing is? Well, I'm going to show you. Ta-da! Living wages and minimum wages. We're going to introduce you.
Miss Minnie Alanis.
Nice to meet you.
And
My name's
yours?
Cecily.
Leslie, nice to meet you. Okay, so we have a question for you, and we want to know, if everyone is aware of this or if they're not aware of this. Do you know the difference between living wages and minimum wages?
I say living wages would probably be like what you can live off of, and minimum wages would be just like the basic pay rate that you would be paid at a job.
Oh, okay. So you know that living wage is tied to the cost of living, and you just said that. If the cost of living goes up, wages go up in the same amount. This is important to maintain a minimum standard of living, right? Okay, so did you know, or do you know, that minimum wages have not gone up since 2009? And they're at $7.25.
I thought it was 8.
So do you mind me asking, do you work?
Yes.
You work minimum wage or above?
Above.
Oh, good,
Yes.
good. I want to know more information. We have a website that you can go to, and it's robertreich.org. And he is really, really good, and he will provide you with a lot of information if you want to know more about living wage.
Yo, what up? It's a friendly neighborhood bro, Hallie here. And today I'm going to be interviewing this young lady. What's your name?
Miriam.
Nice to meet you. Alright. You know the difference between living wages and minimum wages?
No.
Well, alright. Living wages are basically like the money you need to like pay your bills, buy a new phone, stuff like that, money you spend and you need to live off of. And then minimum wages is the money you earn. That's basically it. And minimum wage has... Did you know the minimum wage of $7.25 has not gone up since 2009? But the cost of living has gone up by 3.22%.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there is no way you can keep going without being in debt or working more.
Seems about right.
Yeah. Well, for more information, you can go to our website at robertreich.org. You can learn more about this types of topics, and you can learn.
What's your name? Brittany. Hi, Brittany. Nice to meet you. I'm going to go ahead and ask you if you know the difference between living wage and minimum wage. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know the difference, or?
Well, I know minimum wage is like what, $7.25 an hour, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Correct. Yes. So living wage is actually like, if you buy food. For example, you know how the avocados just recently went up? Did you know that?
And you would mention avocados because they're delicious, right?
I
Yes.
love avocados. I didn't
They
know.
actually they actually just went up to like is it like $1 or almost $2 per avocado? I don't know if you knew that, but yeah. So but then they're still paying us the minimum wages, which is $7.25. Now the minimum wage hasn't gone up since 2009.
Did you know that?
I did not.
No. But the living wage has gone up since by 3.22% in the past years. So there's no way you can keep up without going into debt or working more, to
Balance it out.
balance your living wage and your minimum wage. If you do want to know more information, you can visit the site robertreich.org.
Already.
He's got really good information. You'll learn a lot from him.
Hey y'all, it's their favorite neighborhood cool cat, Skates McGee. And I'm here with him. What's your name?
John.
Hi John, nice to meet you. Alright, so I gotta ask you a question. You know the difference between living wage and minimum wage?
I don't know.
Well, lucky for you, I managed to have some information on the topic conveniently at hand. Living wage is tied to the cost of living index. It's like your bills, pay for like a new skateboard, like a new watch, hat, all your bills. and it's important. Helps the function, stuff.
Of course.
And the minimum wage, which you said is like 7.5, hasn't gone up since 2009, but the living wage has gone up by 3.22%.
Oh wow, I did not
And
know
because of that, no matter how hard we work, we will constantly be in debt. Shocking, isn't it?
that. Very.
Spread
Do
the
you
truth,
work?
honey.
Yes, ma'am, I do work.
Minimum wage?
No, ma'am, I work at HEB.
How long
All
have
right,
you
mate.
been there?
I have been there for a little bit over a year, and I'm a cross-functional trainer, so I'm getting my training in to be a manager.
Oh,
that's
okay.
good.
So, if you don't mind me asking, have you gotten a raise?
I've gotten 3 raises in the past year that I've been there.
Go to robertreich.org. Got lots of information.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I will look into that.
What we're talking about is living wage versus minimum wage. And I think for the most part, people agree that a minimum wage is important. We have collectively decided as a society that we value labor. And we create protections for labor, including wage earning. So minimum wage was decided for that very reason, for the voice of labor and to ensure that we have a labor force and that can function. The problem is that minimum wage is simply that. And what's happened over time is the minimum wage has stayed flat, but the cost of living has risen. So here we are flat in wages, and cost of living has risen. There is a huge gap, and as a result of that gap, those people are unable to live. 30 years ago, the gap was much smaller. That gap is ever widening. And what does that mean to you and I? It means inability to advance. People can't advance if they're in the hole. They can't advance if they can't meet their bills, feed their family, work, go to school, seek higher education, find adequate child care, get adequate health care. It cannot happen. And I think sometimes people buy into an argument that, well, companies can't afford to pay a living wage because a living wage is tied to the cost of living. So when the cost of living goes up, your wages go up. Within a certain amount, it stays consistent. It doesn't ever widen. Well, the argument is that companies can't afford to do that. A good example would be Walmart. Well, they can afford to do that. Every company can afford to pay living wages. But why would they if they're not required to? A corporation is based upon one goal, and that is profit. There is no other goal. The goal is not products. The goal is not hiring people. The goal is profit. People get confused by that. They think they're job creators. No, they are not job creators. Job creators are the consumers. We are a 70% consumer-based economy. Consumers are our economic growth. Companies don't want to pay it because they want to increase their profitability. And why would they when they can take in all the profit and they can outsource the cost? All these large companies that pay minimum wage outsource cost. How would you like to do that? You take in all the money, but you don't have to pay any fees. You don't have to pay for stuff. Wouldn't that be awesome? You just get to keep all your money. Well, it doesn't work that way for us. Why should it work that way for them? When Walmart pays a minimum wage and then tells you to sign up for public assistance, and then the public turns around and blames you for being on public assistance, that's Walmart's fault. It's not the people's fault. Walmart wants to stock up all their profits and pay to their shareholders. If they would provide a living wage for people, it would get them off of Why should taxpayers pay their costs? See, that's where people are wrong. They believe that that taxpayers are paying your costs. No, we're paying Walmart's costs. We're paying Target's costs. We're paying large food chain costs. Every large corporation in America wants to outsource their costs. And we have to understand that those costs are theirs. And if we had a living wage, they would have to pay them. No longer would you and I be taking on those costs, or our government. Taxpayer dollars would not be funding their costs. That is what's so important. They need to take responsibility for not only their profitability, but for the costs incurred in doing business. So if they pay a living wage, then that means their employees get health care, can adequately feed their children, can educate themselves, can advance in society. A living wage would create a healthier democracy. Because in a more informed populace, a populace that can advance because their basic needs are being met. See, when your basic needs aren't being met, you cannot advance. But if your basic needs are being met through a living wage, that would afford people the opportunity to seek further education. So the more informed population that we have, the more participatory, the healthier the democracy. It is in the best interest of the people as a whole for our government to pass a living wage requirement, requiring companies to take on not only the profit that they make off of their consumers, but the cost involved in doing business. Now the argument might be, well, they will go somewhere else. They'll go to another country. They already do. They go to other countries. They get military regimes to provide labor, and they use human resources all around the world. Well, we can create laws to change that as well. Make it more difficult for them to do business in the United States. If you're not going to provide the same exact requirements that we have as a democracy in another country, then maybe you don't sell your products here. There are things that we can do. We have to have the will. In order to have the will, people have to be informed. They have to understand the real problem. The real problem is companies want to keep all the profits and they want to outsource all the costs of doing business, which is logical for a profit-making entity. But it is not in the interest of all the people of the United States. What is in our interest is that companies pay a living wage to provide for their workers. That is a healthy democracy.